you.
Guys, it is the penultimate episode of American Ninja Warrior Season 8. We are almost at the finish line. The rest of the Stage 1 finalists are ready to conquer this course, and there are some upsets, so stick around, let's talk about it.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
There we go. Let's get that going.
Yes, if only you could see backstage as things start when Ty hits himself and he's like, let's go!
I gotta wake myself up. It's the cameras, it's the lights, it's MC Chris. It all comes together, and we got a show going. Guys, this, as always, is your American Ninja Warrior after show right here on AfterBuzz TV. We're talking Season 8, Episode 12. We are almost at the finish line, guys. After tonight, there's only one episode left. As always, I'm your host, Ty Matthews. You can find me on all forms of social media at Ty Matthews PMA, as well as various other after shows. But more importantly than that,
no thing could be more important than PMA, positive mental attitude.
Positive mental attitude. PMA all day, guys. Keep that in mind. And speaking of positivity,
I'm here too. I'm Chris Howard. You can reach me at Chris Howard Live on Twitter and Instagram. Also go to legendarylivingdaily.com for tips, motivation, inspiration, and legendarylivingtv.com for YouTube.
Chris, Season 8 has flown by. We are already almost over.
I was kind of bummed when I heard that next week was the finale.
That's pretty nuts, but it makes sense that we're doing both Stage 2 and Stage 3 next week because there were so few finishers tonight.
Oh my God. I mean, between tonight and there were only 8 from the first one, it's like this is a very small group.
It's a record. There hasn't been a number of finishers this low in years, if ever.
They must have been pushing up the pressure of the course,
exactly,
and making it tougher. They don't want to give that $1 million away. Is the
they
thing.
they threw up the stats of seasons 5, 6, and 7. All of them had more finishers by this time in the season than season 8.
Well, did you notice that in tonight's episode, in relationship to the previous episode, they added the buzzer that was right in their face, the last 30 seconds being counted down, and it sounded much louder to me. On those last final 10 seconds.
It's got to be a hell of a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So let's recap. We're still running with the same Stage 1 course as we saw last week, but for those of you joining us for the first time this week, welcome. Let's recap the course. Of course, we start off with the snake run. The snake run, it seems like being a variation of the floating steps that we've seen before.
But much tougher.
And it's tougher. It's really taking out more people than I would have expected.
And people who you would never expect.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said at the top, we saw a lot of upsets. We'll talk about that. After the snake run is the propeller bar. Now, the propeller bar, it seemed like it was conquerable last week. Tonight is a completely different story.
We've got a lot of people tonight.
Absolutely. Once again, a lot of upsets on the propeller bar. After the propeller bar is the giant log grip. That huge, as the name suggests, giant log you've got to wrap your arms around, and the jolt of that log hitting the end of that course really knocked a lot of people for a loop.
Very, very tough. And to hold on to that without being able to wrap your legs all the way around the log, plus the small pad.
Exactly.
Impossible to pass.
Very, very, very small landing pad. It's a game of precision. Next up is the jumping spider. Now we found out here it's 58 inches across at the curvature of the wall, and then 48 inches on the inside.
Well, okay, I'm like, and that means something to you? No, what that meant to me was that you had to really go deep to nail it and stick it and stay inside.
Exactly. Yeah. If you hit your feet on the curvature of that wall, you're pretty much a goner.
Right.
After the jumping spider is the sonic curve, a series of ascending podiums followed by a rope swing. Next up, of course, as always, the 14-foot warped wall with half as much of a run in as it had in previous courses.
Very tough run up that warped wall in these finals.
Definitely. From there, it's the broken bridge, a series of kind of tilting platforms. It seems like that you have to run across the tops of. It seemed like you almost had to have a violent fall off of the broken bridge.
There's no choice. You have to throw yourself forward and hope for the best.
Right. It seemed like 99% of the runners were skipping steps, just trying to make it across that platform. Next up, of course, is the flying squirrel. From the flying squirrel, you had to jump on a set of handles. And not even a straight bar, just the handles themselves.
It seems like an impossible task. It certainly did for me last week, and this week was no different.
Exactly. From there, you lache onto a second set of handles. From there, you lache once more onto a cargo net. You make it up the net with, like you said, those numbers flashing in front of your face, just adding that element of pressure. And from there, you finally hit the buzzer, hopefully making it onto stage 2.
You know what? I think that added pressure really got into their heads in this episode. There were a few of them that went through and had a really good mental state, a really good focus clarity, but a lot of pros we saw thrown off their game in this episode.
Absolutely. Now, I talked about the curvature of that wall for the jumping spider. That takes us right into our very first ninja of tonight, Kirstie Pratt, the machine from St. Louis. She sparked her husband's interest in American Ninja Warrior. She was the one that did the obstacles at their own wedding.
Right.
In her wedding
dress. She was that her tape that she was submitting?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay,
yeah.
So she had in her wedding dress. She's doing obstacles.
Right. Now she had a little bit of trouble on the propeller bar, which seemed especially relentless towards women. It seemed like tonight.
Yeah.
They I think they even made mention on commentary. A lot of the women that fell to this course fell to the propeller bar.
Well, I think the problem was the height, because it was a long reach out toward the propeller bar, and we saw that with some of the best.
And it really seemed like it was only effective if you could wrap your arms around the propeller. If you tried to grip it with your hands, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah, because you also have to grab the rope as it's swinging around. So there was a lot involved with that. So if you didn't go deep on it on the initial bounce, I think you were in a lot of trouble.
Exactly. So it's a close call on the propeller bar, a close call after the giant log grip, but it's that jumping spider. Her feet land right on the curve where it's 58 inches rather than 48, and she goes right into the water.
Really tough. The machine couldn't get the mechanics of the jumping spider.
Exactly. Yes. That's exactly right. Next up, Nick Hansen, our Eskimo ninja from Unalakleet, Alaska. Unalakleet.
Did you practice that?
I believe I could even still be getting it wrong, but I think that's how you say it. Now, this guy, he's a world Eskimo Indian Olympics champion.
What did they say? 6-time champion or something like that?
Yeah,
it was like
he's
ridiculous.
An expert in the toe kick and the knuckle hop.
You gotta wonder what these activities really are. Are you actually kicking somebody's toe, or are you just kicking?
Who knows? I didn't get a chance to do my homework on the World Eskimo Indian Olympics, but I'm very curious. I'm very excited to see.
So you didn't migrate over there online to the original peoples of the planet to find out
exactly
how they were doing it.
Now we talked about the giant log grip and how that jolt at the end of the course can really knock you for a loop. But he waited. He sacrificed those seconds that it takes to wait for it to settle so that he could land gently on that landing platform.
Well, to me, it seems the smartest strategy. And for a guy who's out there in the middle of the ocean, finding a place to land is probably a little bit of land here is worth it to the Eskimos, right?
Exactly. But you know what? For as much as that might have helped him, it seems those seconds may have come back to bite him in the long run.
It's quite possible.
Because he barely recovers off the jumping spider. He makes a beautiful run across the broken bridge, makes it past the flying squirrel, and he comes up short on the platform in arm's reach, almost within the buzzer.
It's like you see the Arctic freeze on his face as he's running to the buzzer, and they stop the Eskimo in his tracks.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough.
And that was kind of disheartening to see that happen.
Exactly. And over the course of the night, you really get a feel for exactly how much time someone needs once they lache onto that cargo net off of the flying squirrel.
Yeah, but the one thing I will also add here is that we got to see the people learning from last episode to this episode, because their strategies definitely adapted.
Exactly. Next up is Brent Stephenson. Of course, we know him, one half of American Ninja Warrior's former royal couple, along with Casey Catanzaro.
They were like the Brad and Angelina.
Exactly.
Ninja Warrior.
And you got to feel so bad for him, because every single time they show up on camera, it seems like everyone's got to remind them, like, oh, these guys used to date. They're not a couple anymore.
I know, and it's like the sob story. And Casey is so gorgeous that she's got people falling over left and right. It's like, it's gotta hurt. That's gotta be tough. He's gonna take that love and channel it into the course.
Exactly. But to their credit, they're still friends. They're still co-owners of the same gym in San Antonio.
And we saw Casey at Team Ninja Warrior that we went to at the College Madness.
We did at College Madness.
It was kind of neat seeing her there live.
We talked about doing kind of the Christine Lee position.
I'm fantastic. fantastic. I'm proud of her. I hope she keeps going with that. I think she seems excited about that. The question though, I thought Casey didn't make it through the qualifying round.
Now you see, I was thinking the same thing.
Really?
We need to go back and.
Okay, so now
I thought the exact same thing.
All right. We're.
It could be, yeah. We need to go back. Need to do some detective work. But I was thinking the exact same thing.
They could have thought, let's sneak Casey into Vegas.
Right.
I mean, it had my attention. If you're out there and you know the answer, let us know on the video.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got Brent Stevenson. He was the very first American to complete the ultimate cliffhanger last season. Now we see so many different obstacles that are all based on grip strength, and that is absolutely one of the most difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he was, he had nothing this year but to channel all of his love, his passion,
exactly,
into the course.
And it's and not only that, but he had the pressure of last year coming in. He had the fastest time on stage 1 last season.
A lot of pressure.
So there's a lot of pressure riding him. And honestly, for one of the veterans, for one of kind of the old guard, he didn't make it past the giant log grip.
Wow.
It was one of those things where as the log was swinging up and he's parallel with the water, he kind of pushes off the log.
Oh yeah, you saw it. It was hanging up here like in space.
Yeah, and
for a moment.
he pushes off of it thinking that he's completely over the landing pad, and that was not the case.
Yeah. Now, see, I think that the strategy for this was they had to slow down, even though it took a couple seconds off, and step off that log, because those that I saw jumping off or falling off, I felt like it was just luck that landed them on the platform.
Exactly. Yeah. Between the velocity at which you're coming down and just that aggressive jolt that can really, really test your grip strength.
You found the perfect word, aggressive jolt. It was hard to find, because we were talking about how there would be those violent stops in the downslide of the log, but an aggressive jolt is the way to describe it.
Exactly. And so that it was the first upset of the night, certainly not the last.
No, everybody was shocked too, because I mean, I think tonight was a night of shock and awe.
Oh, there were multiple moments where I audibly gasped.
I did too. I was sitting in Denny's watching it, and I'm sitting there, and when Casey went down, I was like, ah! Sorry, we're not there yet. But I gasped out loud. The people around me were like, what's up with
Absolutely,
him?
Yeah. You get invested, especially this late in the season. Next up is Jon Stewart, the oldest ninja competitor to compete in the finals.
Now, I have to say, I was a little offended by this, because he was born in 1961, was it?
I believe so. And they did kind of.
And they're like, the stamp cost you 4 cents.
4 cents.
Everybody walked with no shoes. I'm like, I was born in 1970. This was 9 years before I was born. You could go to a movie for no money and just trade your chicken eggs. And I was like, what the hell, man?
It was a lot of work went into that graphic just to drive the point home of how old Jon Stewart.
This guy's really old. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Comparatively speaking, sure, he's not that old, but for what everyone is doing on this course, it's pretty impressive. But it's like we said, it's if you try to grasp onto the propeller bar.
Don't grab them
with only your hands, it doesn't work out. And it was that rope swing. He managed to hold onto the propeller, but grabbing onto that rope afterwards, it slipped right through his fingers.
Just couldn't do it. He was in early retirement, and the oldest competitor didn't get to make it to the latter part of the course. Yeah.
Exactly. Next up, John Alexis Jr. This just a giant of a ninja at 6'6". Which, we've talked about the pros and cons of both the shorter competitors and the taller competitors.
Right.
Obviously, it seems like it comes in handy on something like the jumping spider.
For sure. There seemed to be, one would have thought that the height really played to his advantage, except for when he was in the jumping spider.
Right. It seemed like he was almost too tall for it, because he was so cramped and his legs were just kind of bending in on each other.
He looked like the spider that you kind of half crushed, and it was like its legs were over here.
Exactly. But it did come in handy on the warped wall, because it seemed like he really got zero momentum going up and still managed to make it.
The guy could have just put his hand up and hold himself.
Exactly.
He looked like a globetrotter, right? He was like stretched out.
Now, but as he makes it along across the course, he has a hard landing off the broken bridge. It looks like he's really kind of exhausted and sort of gassed out.
He did. And you don't see that. I mean, that level of exhaustion that often. They don't display it as much, but we saw it there for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, we see him gassed out, and it looked like that was a factor in that second set of handles on the flying squirrel.
Yep, sure.
Just can't quite make it. Lands in the water.
Giant
He's
takes
so
a
close.
huge fall.
So close to the end.
But not close enough.
Exactly. Next up, we've got Josh Levin, interned at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab.
How cool is that?
I love, the different, we get so many of these kind of geniuses that are running these courses.
And then they have us doing the after show. Where's the logic in that?
Exactly. But he's a 19-time national speed climbing champion.
And they kind of said that as a throwaway.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Did you get that? I'm like, what? Did you just say 19 times?
I'm like, that wasn't. I mean, sure. Like, it's awesome that he worked at Jet Propulsion Labs.
Yeah.
But could we not touch on that part in his video?
And by the way, he won 19 times speed climbing as national champion. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. By the time he makes it to the warped wall, he just barely makes it with the fingertips of one hand.
That was wild, but there you see that climbing expertise where he's able to, those strong fingers, because your average Joe couldn't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Makes it up, has another hard landing across the broken bridge, but manages to become the first finisher of the night with 7.76 seconds left on the clock.
He rocketed through this course.
Absolutely.
Jet propulsion NASA scientist.
It was one of those things I kind of wondered at one point if we would see maybe finishers in the single digits tonight.
Yeah, well, I wondered, but we started to see him come in, and he was the first of a few here.
Exactly. Next up is Giselle Bozeman, and Giselle Bozeman, this run really jumped out at me for the speed and the agility that he showcased. It was absolutely unreal.
Yep. And he had trouble in the jumping spider as well, didn't he?
He had a little bit of a jump problems on the jumping spider. I mean, kind of not a great run on a lot of the obstacles. Like, he had to kind of make a couple revolutions on the propeller bar, hung up a little bit on the rope swing after the sonic curve. He tumbles just at the very end of the broken bridge once again. It's like there's not many people tonight that had a completely smooth run across that obstacle.
Not really at all, but
it's the flying squirrel that does him in,
and it's no wonder. I mean, it's not that's not rocket science to reference our last one.
Right, exactly.
That flying squirrel is a bitch.
Right. Now let's talk about the king of obstacles, Matt Rush. Love this guy. He's got the crown. Kept it on the entire time during the Atlanta qualifiers.
And so the deal tonight was that Matt and Akbar were going to put their own crowns on if he made it all the way through. If he
managed to finish the course, which would be no small feat considering that he's the heaviest finalist ever.
It's the heaviest. Now he's 220 pounds.
220.
Right? He looked like a specimen though. This
just
guy,
solid.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we'd love to look like that, wouldn't we?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And his dad, I loved his dad, near and dear to my heart, of course, a former pro wrestler.
Right.
And looks every bit of the part.
Yeah. Tough guy. He looks.
Exactly, but
rough.
This guy, he's not only just a mass at 220 pounds, but he's fast as well. He's got a 4.5 second 40-yard dash.
Wow.
So that combination of size and agility.
You see that right out the gate, too.
Exactly, but it's the jumping spider. Once again, he gets a good pace going on the front half of the course, but it's the jumping spider. He slips a little bit, and that's enough to do him in.
That's enough to take the king out. In chess, that's when you lose your king, you lose everything, right? So he took a royal fall, and that was the end of the king.
You might say a royal flush.
A royal flush
into the water.
Well, but it was it wasn't a winning royal flush.
Of course. Now we talked about seeing Casey at the team Ninja Warrior course, but we also saw Natalie Duran, who's up next.
Now, and that shocked and surprised me, and I know you thought the same thing because when we saw her last week, didn't we? And she was on crutches.
She had a bum ankle, it seemed like.
Yeah, I think it was her right leg, if I'm not mistaken. And she looked like she wasn't walking well at all. I mean, like she looked like she was seriously injured.
Exactly, yeah, and I'm not sure exactly when they taped tonight's episode, but yeah, it did seem. I don't know if maybe one caused the other.
Well, so do you think maybe tonight's episode was actually filmed prior to the time we saw her?
It could be, yeah.
Wow, because I mean, I was going, how the hell is she running this course coming off crutches like that?
Right.
Yeah.
It might have been her fall on here because she, we get an awesome video package. I love Natalie Duran. She talks about being the rainbow sheep of her family because every family has their black sheep, but she's so boisterous and so colorful.
She's the rainbow
She'd be
sheep.
the rainbow sheep. She's only one of 2 women that qualified for the LA City Finals, but like we talked about, it's that propeller bar. She was actually the 16th person to fall to that obstacle.
Yikes. And I was watching her the whole time because now you just kind of changed my whole view on the world. I was watching her leg and going, how's she going to do that? And I thought that perhaps when she jumped off the trampoline to the propeller bar, that she wasn't able to get the height because she was nursing the ankle.
Oh, interesting.
But
I'm wondering if it might have been vice versa. If it might have been that jump that hurt her ankle.
Oh my God!
Because we get kind of a John Madden style slow-mo instant replay, and she hits that tramp and she goes outwards but not upwards.
Natalie Duran, we want to know the truth.
Right.
The whole truth, please.
We need that timeline.
Let us know.
Next up is Adam Rail from Phoenix. He was a walk-on in LA, waited 2 weeks in that walk-on line.
My God, this guy has strength of body and will, because he builds, as we have seen in previous episodes, he builds these concrete tabletops, and that's how he gained his strength, was lifting his whole family in the family business. But 2 weeks in line,
yeah, exactly,
that takes strength of will. Yeah,
exactly. But I mean, especially for a rookie for their very first time in the finals, he made an incredible pace. He had to spin an extra revolution or two on the propeller bar. Had a pretty easy landing on the log grip, which I think helped him. In the long run.
Right.
But it really looked like, it seemed like everyone was kind of sweating it. They weren't sure if he was gonna make it.
Hard to tell.
But he ended up making it past that broken bridge, past the flying squirrel, up that cargo net, finishes with 4.74 seconds to go. And he's the first walk-on to finish stage 1 in, I think, 3 seasons.
So this concrete worker cements his place in American Ninja Warrior history.
Mm-hmm. A walk-on hasn't finished stage 1 since season 6.
I did not realize that. That's amazing.
So he had a lot of pressure going in, but I mean his mom was there cheering him on, and when you've got family, of course it really pushes you that extra mile.
Absolutely. Great to see too.
Absolutely. Now, of course, this week it was a big week. It was a big week, obviously, for Ninja Warrior. That's the season's almost over, but it's a big week for fantasy football.
Oh yes, I know. That's your favorite. You can't stop.
I had my draft last week. I'm not huge into sports, but fantasy football really kind of.
You're not huge into sports. Come on.
Well, it gives me a reason to really root for someone. Football isn't my number one sport, but it's fantasy sports really gives me a reason to get into it. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about fantasy sports, specifically about DraftKings.com. Now, football season is finally here, so it's time to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win your share of $100,000 in DraftKings free Week 1 contest. Now, that's right. DraftKings is hosting a free contest this weekend with $100,000 in total prizes up for grabs. DraftKings.com is the destination for 1 week fantasy football. Now, 1 week fantasy means no season-long commitments. You can play whenever you want, with the players you want. You just pick your contest, draft your players, and follow your team live. You can renew old rivalries with friends to prove you're the superior GM, or you can even try 50-50 contests where the top half of all entries win cash. DraftKings even has contests exclusively for beginners. There's something for everyone at DraftKings.com. Now here is the call to action, guys. You got to hurry on over to DraftKings.com. Use that promo code BUZZ. That's BUZZ as in AfterBuzz, BUZZ, and play for free in this weekend's $100,000 fantasy contest. This contest is 100% free, so guys, really, there's no reason not to play. Again, that's code BUZZ, BUZZ, to play for free for your share of $100,000 this weekend. Eligibility restrictions may apply. Go to that website for details. That is DraftKings.com.
Love it.
Absolutely love DraftKings.
And Matt and Akbar were promoting the football this episode
exactly,
as well.
Akbar, he was repping his Raiders.
Yep.
Of course, Matt repping his Broncos.
And we're doing the fantasy.
Exactly. It all comes full circle. Yes. That's what we're talking about right here at AfterBuzz TV, guys. Now let's talk Drew Dressel. We talked a lot about the veterans going into tonight. Drew Dressel, he's the real life ninja. He's got all of his students watching him, which you got to think is really pushes him.
All the kids, yeah. And he's got such a great connection with them.
Exactly. Obviously having friends and family there, that's amazing. But having students there, having essentially the next generation of Ninja Warriors.
Yeah, exactly. What a great leader and role model, though. I mean, the guy, I felt like I could feel his character coming through. Sure. In the episode, like he's a great role model for these kids.
Absolutely. Now he absolutely flies through the first couple obstacles at just a blistering pace, but it seems like that catches him up a little on the propeller bar. He manages to save himself, almost goes in the water after the giant log grip. I mean, so many close calls.
All the splash came
exactly.
by. I think his shoes got wet. Do you?
There were so many close calls between the log grip, the sonic curve, the jumping spider, but he manages to go all the way, finish with 7.78 seconds to go. This is his fourth time going on to stage 2.
Just amazing. And she asked in the post interview, Christine Leahy had asked him, well, how did you do it? He said, I've just been working on my weaknesses. And that's, I know that in sports, a philosophy is polish up every weakness until it becomes your greatest strength.
Right, absolutely.
And he says, I don't think I have any anymore.
Well, and we saw someone, I think it might have been Casey, that said, like, you really don't know what to work on until you're in the middle of it doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So until you fall and fail.
Exactly. So really,
how do you know?
it's got to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of going back and really studying tapes as if you were an old school football player.
Absolutely, or a boxer or a fighter or anything. You gotta watch the footage and figure out what you got to improve.
Exactly. Now, obviously, a lot of strong athletes, but a lot of strong gymnasts, like our next ninja, Najee Richardson, the Phoenix, straight out of Philadelphia. I love this guy. He pretty much grew up in gymnastics until an injury kind of stopped that.
Young age, right? What time? You got age of 10. He started in gymnastics, and the injury stopped it. But he gets to shine once again. He's like the Phoenix rising from the ashes.
Exactly.
Here on the Ninja Course.
Now he gets stuck once again. He's another guy that gets stuck on that propeller bar, misses the rope a couple times, manages to grab it, has a nice dismount off the giant log grip. He loses a little bit of time on that rope swing after the sonic curve, which seemed like another recurring theme tonight.
Yep.
A lot of people, they seem to make it fine going up the steps themselves, but it was that rope swing going on to, like you talked about last week, it's almost like a balance beam that you're landing on.
Yeah, I noticed it much more this week. How about yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was like, that is a balance beam that they've got to grab that rope, swing across to, and if you don't have the momentum coming off the last step, you're kind of screwed.
Exactly. And I was really, really worried that was going to come back to bite him. But he lands so high on the cargo net from the flying squirrel.
That? Yeah, the Phoenix was rising,
exactly.
right up to the top.
Exactly. And it really seemed like that kind of saved him. Finished with 8.01 seconds to go.
Oh, man. And this was one where you're invested, you're watching. It's like, is he going to make it? Is he not?
Exactly. I mean, if he had had a little bit worse of a lache off of that flying squirrel, it might have been it.
Right. Yeah. And we saw people here tonight that had the same amount of time and didn't make it.
Right.
And that ran successfully through the course, but still didn't make that 2-minute, 20-second time limit.
Exactly. Now, next up, we've talked a lot about the Wolfpack this season. So, of course, we got to talk about Megan Martin, climbing coach from Boulder, Colorado. They talk about how she has a friendly rivalry with Jessie Graff. I love seeing rivalries, whether it's between James McGrath and Drew Dreshel, whether it's between Jessie Graff and Megan Martin. There's a lot of different rivalries that you see going on.
Have you ever seen a sport, though, where they were so supportive of one another? They can play up the rivalries.
Exactly.
But we know that behind the scenes, these guys are supporting one another. And they want to win. They must. But there's so much communal support.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a sport like that.
I think ultimately it's really only stage 4 where you're kind of going for yourself.
Right.
Everything else, I mean, why wouldn't you push for everyone to make it?
Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah, but like I said, once it gets to stage 4, all bets are off.
The Wolfpack
that's $1 million.
The Wolfpack disbands. It's every wolf for himself.
But this is obviously one of the brightest stars that we've seen all season long.
She's awesome.
Has kind of a slow pace on that snake run, but she falls a little too early on that giant log grip.
Yeah,
like we talked about, that aggressive jolt, it just knocked her hands clean off.
That was it. She started slipping down after the second jolt, and that was it. I had no idea she was 5'3".
Right.
That's not very tall.
No,
especially when it comes to the propeller and all those other things that she's going to have to do.
Exactly. Well, hell, even the shortest competitor of the season, Tyler Yamauchi, is only 5'1".
Right.
So it's only a matter of 2 inches taller than him. So
it's really remarkable that she's done so well to get this far. And
right. But I mean, yeah, we talked about how many upsets we saw tonight. This was certainly one of them. Seeing her go off on only the third obstacle of stage 1.
Yeah. People weren't expecting it, and but I applaud her effort once again, and like the height, all these natural things come into effect. They have to play in. And,
yeah, definitely. Definitely. And next up, Crazy Craver. I absolutely love Crazy Craver. This guy is doing curls with flaming dumbbells.
He's doing the flaming salmon ladder. I think he burnt himself on the flaming side. He's like, oh shit, falls off.
But it's ridiculous. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to see. And of course, they talk about how he's dating a yoga instructor now. Which you couldn't write something like that.
No, you couldn't. And I got to say, she's hot.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
absolutely.
really hot. Mm-hmm. And Crazy Craver's crazy.
I love this guy.
And so I'm looking at him going, how did this happen?
Right, sure.
Did you think that or no? Or is this just me?
It makes sense. It makes sense because I think someone with such
intensity,
such insane intensity, it's got to be alluring for sure. I mean,
great.
This guy, he comes out in these gold lame shorts, gold body paint all over himself,
tattoos painted. That actually looked kind of cool. I like that.
Oh, look, yeah, absolutely. And she was sporting that as well.
She looked beautiful. She's standing on the side, and part of me thought he was of the other persuasion, like he liked men. I don't mean that that was what I thought. And then I see this hottie girl next to him. I'm like, oh wow, there's this interesting dynamic between the two. And apparently he's gotten all into yoga.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got to be the perfect compliment to each other.
Neat couple.
Now, Crazy Craver, one of the things that I noticed on this course is that there's kind of what I mean. I say the old guard, but it's the people from the last maybe 2, 3, 4 seasons that are kind of like, are they going to do it again? Are they going to do it again? And it seemed like a lot of them didn't end up making it.
Yeah.
But then there's this kind of new class. There's people like Daniel Gill. There's people like Jake Murray. There's people like Crazy Craver that seem kind of bulletproof. Yeah. We talk about how you can't guarantee anything, and how Akbar even said the course does not care who you are or what you've done.
He said it's very unforgiving.
Exactly. But it seems like there are members of this new class that are kind of bulletproof. Like I would be truly shocked if someone like Jake Murray and ended up losing it, especially on like the first obstacle.
You know what? All bets are off for me, because when you see people that are really good like Brett go down so quickly, so easily.
Yeah.
It's
it almost seems like the old guard is kind of passing the torch a little bit.
So you think we're really old? You think the stamp thing for 4 cents and that is it's getting to us, and that age limit's going down?
Well, that's the thing. I think age is so relative in the world of American Ninja Warrior.
Right.
You could have a very short shelf life or an extremely long one.
Yeah.
But it's after a few seasons, it seems like that pressure might start catching up to you.
Well, and when we look back once again to Megan Martin's height, at 5'3", and then you look at age. You look at wingspan, you look at all these things. They all do play into this. Right. I was watching this episode thinking, okay, these guys that they're saying, wow, he's 5'7" and 155 pounds, and I'm thinking, that's what I was in high school. High school. So these are small people, they're wiry people that are really flying through this course.
Sure.
So I think all these things add up.
Absolutely. But like I said, Crazy Craver, he seems like one of those guys that's absolutely bulletproof. He almost loses it on not the landing to the log grip, but going from the platform to the walkway. He almost loses it doing that.
You never know what to expect.
You really never know. But everything else, it seems like he has absolutely no issues with. Ends up finishing the course with 11.03 seconds to go. Swims it up on top of the buzzer.
His girlfriend's going crazy on the side. And I mean, I think that was the fastest run of the night to that point.
To that point. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We'll see that get absolutely demolished later on.
Right.
But we'll talk about that. Now let's talk about Nick Kostreski, the KO Ninja. Starts out with the boxing robe.
Those were the colors of Rocky too, weren't they? The yellow, the Italian stallion.
Absolutely.
Comes out. Yeah.
Now what I love is that his video package, it's mainly focused on how he builds and designs supersonic tunnels.
Right.
But there are a couple of throwaway B-roll shots where he's like juggling, riding a unicycle, like that. It's kind of like what we talked about, the guy that interned at NASA. Like that was almost like an afterthought.
Well, they're both engineers. I think they're both aerospace engineers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're.
But this guy just also happens to be able to ride a unicycle. He can juggle.
Modern day Leonardo.
Right. Exactly. This is his first time in the finals. He has kind of a slow pace, and almost like a frustratingly slow pace. pace at times.
Right.
You know, he makes up some time on the jumping spider, but he gets hung up off that sonic curve, stumbles up the warped wall, makes it on the second try, eventually makes it past the flying squirrel onto the cargo net, but he times out on that net.
Yeah, that's got to be frustrating for him, especially with the numbers in their face.
Exactly.
The countdown, and you're on the net, and you know you're not going to make it.
I mean, on the one hand, that could be an extra source of motivation.
Yeah,
that could really light a fire under your ass to make it up that net.
Right.
But at the same time, that could get in your mind and psych you out.
Could get in your head, so it can go either way. And I think that we saw examples of both here this night.
Right.
So there were some people that were intimidated by it, and it got the best of them, and there were others that went through and just stayed in that space, kind of in that zone.
Exactly. I think it was Najee Richardson actually that talked about how once he realized how little time he had, he really kicked it into gear.
Right, and there were others that mentioned that are going to come up that how they were they felt it.
Right, exactly.
They felt it. Actually, I think the real life ninja said that. He said,
"Oh yeah,
I just felt it. I was in that zone. I was on."
Absolutely. Now, I mean, of course, we got to talk about Casey Catanzaro.
I'm so bummed. I wanted to see her.
It's so heartbreaking. She's the only woman to ever finish a city finals course, and we keep seeing these old clips of her getting caught up on trampolines.
Yeah,
you know, overshooting it, hitting the edge, and just falling straight into the water.
Am I crazy, or was there a clip that she had put on her reel or something that had her jumping off a trampoline, flipping over, and then hitting a spider?
Into the jumping spider.
What?
Yeah, that
was awesome.
That
was movie awesome.
Went crazy for that. That was absolutely insane.
It was epic, and it was kind of a flash. And
that's one of those things on paper I wouldn't even think that was possible
at all.
But she flips over into the jumping spider.
And if you blinked, you missed it. It was just in there. But she does a flip off a trampoline into the jumping spider. It's
exactly. But it's like I said, those trampolines. It's when she's on. But it seems like these mini trampolines can really be her kryptonite. And she hits the jump fine, but she tries to grip onto the propeller bar with her fingertips, and it just does not work.
Well, what I saw, and tell me if you saw it different. I saw it looked like the propeller was slightly moving, and I saw it move like this when she hit it, and I thought with the slight movement of it, there's no way she's going to grip it.
I hadn't caught that.
Maybe watch it again, because it looked like it just moved a little bit. So maybe I think there was a little bit.
It may have.
I thought she's gonna. There's no way.
And it's. I mean, you got to think it's so startling when you see her in years past, when you saw her not make it on the trampoline and just overshoot, hit the edge of it, and just fall straight in. This time it's like, oh, she got it. Oh,
and to see how emotional she gets in the after clips and stuff, and how she was really good after this.
Yeah, she was all smiles after this one.
Yeah, her post interview, and I think that's just because Hollywood's hitting her.
Oh, sure,
hitting her up, knocking at her door. She's on hosting these things now, so I think she's smiling, and she knows that it's not about one run. She's got a whole career ahead of her that's going in a new direction, which is exciting. But on the past episodes, you saw that it really hit her emotionally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's sadly she won't be making it on to stage 2. But let's talk about Joe Moravsky.
But we didn't think she'd make it to Vegas.
That's true. So it was.
Who knows?
It was a nice surprise for a while.
Yes.
Still didn't make it, which is heartbreaking. But let's talk about the weatherman, Joe Moravsky.
Yep.
Now I talk about the compounding pressure. Like each year you make it past a stage, it's got to become that much harder.
Right.
To just mentally, psychologically. Yeah. But he's reached stage 3 every single year that he's competed.
Yeah, and to your point, it must get psychologically more difficult.
Right,
it's
exactly. But there are outside sources of strength and of inspiration. He talks about meeting Desi, who had stage 4 neuroblastoma cancer and sadly passed away. It's stories like that, and it's fans like that. And lives like that he says it changed his life.
And I mean, he got teary-eyed when he spoke about it. And what's neat is to see these real life people that are out here doing, and these are people like the person next door. And this is his point too. He wanted people to know that a weatherman could do it, that anybody can do it. And, and to see how emotional he gets about the little girl Desi.
And it's such a symbiotic relationship, because Desi was such a huge fan of his. Yeah. She would make signs for him and just kind of really latched onto him.
You could see her head all been shaved off.
And for as much as he might have touched her life, he talks about how she changed his. And how stories like that can really motivate people to do incredible physical things like American Ninja Warrior.
And he said that she was posting pictures up about how much she loved the ninjas and stuff, and that was just really heartwarming. And So pretty cool. In
Exactly,
terms of,
exactly. And he makes such an amazing pace. Almost loses it on the broken bridge, but manages to finish the entire thing, makes it past the flying squirrel, and hits the buzzer with 4.10 seconds to go. Wow. It's absolutely amazing. And so this is. Hopefully he'll make it all the way to stage 3 again this year.
That'd be great
and
to
just
see.
keep that trend going, and hopefully beyond.
So sunny skies for the weatherman.
Right, of course. Now Jeff Britton, let's talk Jeff Britton, the very first American Ninja Warrior. He might not have won the $1 million, but he was the very first one to hit that buzzer at the top of stage 4.
That's some serious history. He made history for American Ninja Warrior.
Yeah.
And if we were to study the past, we'd think he was going to fly through this course and do phenomenal.
Right. But it's like we said, nothing is guaranteed on this course. This course does not care who you are or what you've won before.
Who are you?
Right, exactly.
You did what?
Now he's the only man to hit 6 buzzers, but sadly it will not be 7. He lost it on the snake run.
First
obstacle. Just like Travis Rosen. We saw him lose it on the very first obstacle.
Yeah.
I mean, just absolutely
insane.
It's probably the loudest gasp for me of the night.
No, it was just totally unexpected, but what do you do?
Of course.
Yeah.
And our final runner of the night, Jake Murray, one of my absolute, next to Crazy Craver, one of my favorite people to watch. And he's this guy. He's the guy that I'm thinking of when I say certain people are bulletproof, because I legitimately could not imagine him failing on an obstacle.
Well,
he's preternaturally good.
There's something preternaturally. That's right out of. I used to read the Anne Rice novels. They said that the vampires were preternatural beings.
Absolutely.
Otherworldly, right?
Sure.
So preternaturally. I love that vocabulary using there. But there's something about him. He's got a fanny pack on.
He's got that fanny pack, and you knew there was something in there that he was going to celebrate with, and you knew that he was going to chance to show what it was.
Now, I did a lot of work in Australia, and you can't say fanny pack in Australia because it means something different.
It means
you know
something
that?
very different.
Yeah, so for our Australian viewers,
still
just
Google that.
Bleep that out.
But he was the second fastest ninja on stage 1 last season, and just obliterated stage 1 this season. He goes straight through from the broken bridge to the flying squirrel without even missing a beat, and that was something that I hadn't seen before. Doesn't even stop to take a breath. Straight from the bridge, right to the jumping to the mini trampoline, up to those handles. He has a low transfer on that cargo net, but he makes it up and he hits the buzzer with 34.75 seconds to go. Almost 35 seconds left.
Nobody was even comparable to him.
Exactly. And he unzips that fanny pack, pulls out a pair of goggles, which that was fine because we've seen him do that cannonball into the water
What's
below
he gonna do?
before.
Goggles.
But then he busts out a corn dog, takes one bite of it, tosses it behind him, hits the water. It's.
I think this guy's the corn dog. You know, he's
Sure.
just being corny, but he put on a good show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see him and Daniel Gill race against each other.
And Crazy Craver, we'll throw him in too.
And Crazy Craver. So we've got 17 people between last week and this week. We've got 17 people moving on to stage 2. And guys, next week is our finale. There's only one episode left.
We're so bummed
of this. We're so bummed, but it's been such an amazing season.
And Jessie has the 5th fastest time so far.
Jessie Graff has the 5th fastest time of all the finishers. Let's talk about everyone that's going to make it to season 2. We've got Jake Murray, of course, with the fastest time by far, followed up by Thomas Stillings, his friendly rival Daniel Gill, then followed up by Brian Arnold, Jessie Graff, Neil Crazy Craver, Nicholas Coolridge, Chris Vilchevsky, Najee Richardson, Drew Dreschel, Josh Levin, Grant McCartney, Flip Rodriguez, Adam Rail, Joe Moravsky, Ethan Swanson, and Michael Torres, who made it just barely hit that buzzer with time to spare.
Wow.
And so that's our field. That's our
lineup.
field. A record low number of finishers in several seasons, if not the entire run of the show.
And some serious, crazy, wild people in that pack.
Absolutely. So next week, guys, next week is it. We'll see these competitors take on stage 2. Then we'll see whoever's left over take on stage 3. And hopefully we'll see stage 4 after that.
Yeah, we need to keep our fingers crossed, huh?
So fingers crossed. You know what? I'm calling it right now. I think it's going to be Jake Murray that wins the $1 million.
You know what? I'm putting all my chips on Jessie.
There you go. There you go. We got our predictions. Guys, thank you so much for joining us, not just today, but for this whole season leading up to this. If you're on iTunes, remember, download, comment, review, subscribe, rate, 5 stars if you're nasty. If you're on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, all that stuff. But Chris Howard, for now, where can they find you?
At Chris Howard Live on Twitter and Instagram, and go to legendarylivingdaily.com for daily tips, inspiration, motivation.
And as always, I am at Ty Matthews PMA on all forms of social media. You can find me on various other after shows, including Monday Night Raw on Monday nights, right here one more time next week. And tomorrow night, Lucha Underground Season 3 premieres. We will have Taya Valkyrie joining us in stage, talking about the season premiere. And that's where you can find us. So go tweet us, find us on Instagram. We love talking about Ninja Warrior. We know you do too, so let's all talk about it together for one more week. But guys, until next week, peace!
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later!
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.